At 86, I no longer see life as something to conquer, but something to understand. There was a time when I believed being a man meant constantly proving myself through strength, through desire, through the approval of others. That belief followed me for decades, quietly shaping my choices, my relationships, and even how I saw my own reflection. But time has a way of peeling back illusions, and what it revealed to me was both humbling and liberating. When we are young, no one teaches us how much of our identity is tied to something so temporary. We're encouraged to chase, to pursue, to burn brightly without ever questioning the cost of that fire. It gives us purpose, yes, but it also traps us in a cycle we rarely examine. We think we're in control, when in truth, we're often being led by impulses we barely understand. There comes a point, though, when that fire begins to soften, not disappear, but change. And for many men, that shift feels terrifying. It feels like the ground beneath us is moving, like we're losing something essential. I remember that fear well. It crept in slowly, whispering that I was becoming less, that I was fading into irrelevance. But what I discovered surprised me. What felt like a loss at first was actually the beginning of clarity. The noise that once filled my mind, the constant need to prove, to pursue, to validate, began to quiet. And in that quiet, I found space. Space to think, to feel, to finally understand myself beyond the roles I had been playing all my life. For years, desire had been a kind of compass for me. It pointed me toward action, toward ambition, toward connection. But it also carried a weight I didn't fully recognize until it began to lift. The pressure to perform, to impress, to measure up. It was always there, even in moments that were supposed to feel natural. As that pressure faded, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. A deep, steady relief that settled into my bones. It was as if I had been running a race my entire life without realizing I could stop. And when I did stop, I saw that the finish line I had been chasing didn't even matter. In that stillness, I began to see people differently, no longer as reflections of my own worth, no longer as goals to achieve or validations to secure. I saw them as they truly were, complex, imperfect, human. And for the first time, my connections felt genuine, not driven by need, but by presence. I also began to understand that intimacy had never really been about the physical. For most of my life, I had confused closeness with desire, thinking one could not exist without the other. But I was wrong. The deepest forms of connection I have experienced in these later years have come from quiet conversations, shared silence, and simple understanding. There is a kind of warmth that does not come from another person, but from within. It took me decades to learn that. I spent so much of my life searching for something outside myself, believing it would complete me. But true completeness, I've learned, is not something you find. It's something you allow. I used to fear becoming invisible. I thought that without the energy and drive of youth, I would somehow disappear from the world. But invisibility, I've come to realize, is not always a curse. Sometimes it is a gift. It allows you to observe, to reflect, to exist without the constant pressure of being seen. There is freedom in no longer needing to impress anyone, no longer measuring your worth by external standards that were never truly yours to begin with. That freedom is quiet, but it is powerful. It changes the way you move through the world. I began to choose peace over excitement, not because life had less to offer, but because I had learned to value different things. Where I once sought intensity, I now seek meaning. Where I once chased moments, I now appreciate them. And strangely, life did not become dull. It became richer, more detailed. Without the constant distraction of desire, I started to notice things I had overlooked for years. The way light falls in the afternoon, the subtle expressions on a person's face, the depth of a simple moment. Clarity replaced chaos, and with that clarity came a deeper understanding of who I am, not who I was told to be, not who I tried to prove myself to be, but who I truly am when all the noise fades away. This stage of life is often misunderstood. People see it as a decline, a winding down, but from where I stand, it feels more like a refinement, like all the unnecessary parts of life are slowly falling away, leaving only what truly matters. I no longer feel the need to hold on to the past. The man I was served his purpose, but I am not him anymore. And that is not something to mourn, it is something to accept with gratitude. There is dignity in change, real dignity, not the kind that comes from appearances or achievements, but the kind that comes from understanding, from acceptance that life moves in cycles and each phase has its own meaning. I spent too many years resisting that truth, trying to hold on to something that was never meant to last forever. But when I finally let go, I didn't feel loss, I felt light. Time, I've realized, is too valuable to spend chasing things that do not bring peace. In my younger years, I thought complexity made life meaningful. Now I see that simplicity holds a deeper kind of beauty. I have become more intentional with how I live, more aware of how I spend my time, who I spend it with, and what I allow into my mind. That awareness has given me a sense of control I never truly had before. And perhaps most importantly, I have found a sense of completeness within myself. Not because I have everything, but because I no longer feel the need to have everything. If there is one thing I would share with anyone walking this path, it is this: do not fear the changes within you. They are not signs of loss, but signs of growth. They are guiding you toward a version of yourself that is calmer, wiser, and more grounded. You are not stepping away from life, you are stepping into it more fully than ever before. Because in the end, a man's strength is not measured by how fiercely he burns, but by how peacefully he stands when the fire has settled. And in that peace, there is a kind of freedom that cannot be taken away.